Hello everyone, this is Matthew from the Done.js core team, and I just want to show off a new feature that just got added to done-autorender. I just released done-autorender 1.5.0 and includes a new feature that is supposed to help with debugging applications because not often, but sometimes an application fails to reattach. The app fails to load when using done-autorender, and I just want to show off a new feature that we added to make this a lot easier than it used to be. Okay, so done-autorender 1.5. If you go to done.js/autorender in GitHub, you click on, make sure you get there, click on the releases. Here's the newest one, 1.5.0. This gives you the release notes, talks a little bit about what we've added. So we've added two things. One is that there's a module with CanZone called CanZone Debug, and what this does is this keeps track of every asynchronous task that's withstanding in the application, and if the zone times out, and it defaults to time out in 5 seconds, but this is configurable. It will log all of those stack traces for everything that didn't finish. So you can kind of look at this, be like, okay, this didn't finish, and this kind of helps you figure out what it is. What was the code that caused this zone not to ever finish? Cool. So this is by itself is very useful. Secondly, we added break on timeout, and go to the README here. It explains this one a little bit more. You added this attribute. Data is optional. You don't have to do that. Still doesn't require that. But if you auto render debug break added to the still script tag, and what that will do is actually it will set a breakpoint for you. So instead of seeing a stack traces like you see here, you actually get a breakpoint. You can kind of go in and be like, okay, well, in this example, let's blow this up here. Hope everyone can see my screen very well. Yes, you can. Okay. You can say, oh yeah, this is calling a set timeout, and it's calling its own function. It's calling itself on the set timeout. So it's just always going to do that. So the zone's never going to finish because we keep calling set timeout recursively. So this kind of it helps you figure out what's the offending code, and then from there, there's a couple things you can do to actually fix that. Anyways, I want to show this off in a live app. So I decided to pull up done.js chat, which is our example application. By the way, this all is mostly for working in the client, not with server-side rendering. So server-side rendering already does a timeout and already has the same stack traces as well, and it will show you that if server-side rendering times out. But we're really talking about if the client times out. So I'm actually using, let me start my server here. I'm using done serve with the static flag. What that says is only serve static assets. Don't do server-side rendering. So that's why I'm just using the development.html file rather than using server-side rendering, like I said. Okay, so load this up. Let's go to the chat page. Yeah, I'm gonna show you an example of what can happen, what can cause an app to not finish. One great example is Socket.io. If you use Socket.io in your applications, it's possible that things won't finish. So normally you use Socket.io, use socket.io/client, I believe. Now if I restart this, actually make sure that I didn't have it spoil. I don't want to spoil everything for everyone. Okay, let's do it now. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Boom, there it happens. Okay, so we can see that the app did not load. We should be seeing a list of messages here. We're not seeing that. That's too bad. Now, if we look down here, we get a whole bunch of stack traces. And this is new, and this is cool. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different stack traces, and then you get an error, which is the timeout. It just says timeout of 5 seconds. You can see it. Oops. But with these stack traces, you can kind of look at them and see what's going on. might wonder, why do you get so many of these? Well, oftentimes what happens is that one thing is slowing the application down, and there's a promise that depends on that, and there's a promise that depends on that. And once you get several promises that are all being observed, you get a lot of different messages. But usually, if you scroll and you kind of look at the root message, you can kind of find out, oh, this is where the problem actually is. So if you look at all these stack traces, all of these happen within Socket.io client. So if I go to here, I can see that, yeah, this is doing a set timeout, and that's kind of interesting. Cool. So yeah, I think this alone gives you a lot of what you need, but made this a little bit better. We have a break on timeout as well. So again, I'm looking at development.html page, and if I edit that and I add data render debug break, I'm going to add that flag. Now refresh my page. And this is going to take a little bit longer because we're actually waiting 5 seconds, and then we're waiting for the next asynchronous thing to occur. So if nothing's happened, we still have to wait for something to happen. So that's why we have both options. And sometimes it's better just to see the stack traces, and sometimes you want to wait. It just depends on how frequently the asynchronous task will get called. So I think this one gets called, oh, there it is. Gets called like maybe every 30 seconds is what's happening here. But here we have a debugger statement. Have a little comment. I put this in there, so hopefully you'll read it. But what it's just trying to tell you is that we're here because something took too long, and if we kind of look at our call stack, we can maybe figure out what's going on. So our call stack is over here. If you've never used a call stack before, it shows you it shows you a function call. It shows you all the code that runs when a function is called. So, you have a function, and that calls other functions, and you can kind of look back to see what all the function calls were that got you here. So we go back one. We're inside of CanZone debug. This is not really what we want. You go back one more. We're inside of CanZone register, which is also more CanZone code. We go back one more. Now we're inside of node modules, engine IO, client lib, transports, WebSocket. Oh, that's a mouthful. This is all Socket.io related code. So what this code is doing is it's calling a set timeout of 0, and then it's going to do some type of, it's going to emit an event. Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure why this thing. The only thing I can think is this done is going to be called recursively somehow, kind of like that set timeout I showed you before. Let me just real quickly see if I can find out where done is called. Oh, it's called here. Okay. Something encodes a packet, and there's a callback, and then it calls done at some point. Interesting. I'm not sure. I'm not really sure. We go back a little bit more. Yeah, we see eventually what we can see, I think. We do eventually see. Oh, yeah. So this is implementing like a ping. It's like it's pinging the server, and then it's going to wait. Look, 60 seconds. It's going to wait to see if the server pings back. And if it doesn't ping back, like I bet if we press play, we'll get some more interesting stuff. Yeah, well, now we're in this heartbeat code. So I think what happens is this ping, it pings the server. It's expecting to get some stuff back quickly, and then clear this timeout. But because we don't get anything back, we just wait a super long time. We just wait for a super long timeout to occur. Yeah, a 60-second timeout to occur. So that's what's happening. So what we can kind of conclude here is that because this is doing kind of a recursive thing, it's like it's pinging the server to get a heartbeat. It's it's setting a timeout for when that heartbeat completes, and because we don't have the I don't have a server running right now actually. So that's why it's never actually completing, because it's not connecting to the socket. Even if it did connect, actually, I should correct myself. Even if it did connect, it's gonna keep doing this over and over, right? Every time it gets a new message, it creates a new set timeout, and it pings the server again. So it's like it's just doing this all the time. It's just continuously doing a heartbeat. So that's not good. We don't want this code to run within the zone. We don't want the page to not render because of this particular code. So what do we do about this? Okay, luckily this is a pretty common problem in Done.js apps, so I already know the solution. But let's just go through a couple of possible solutions. There's a couple ways to solve this. In this application, we use socket.io in this message model. We can see import IO from socket.io client. IO is a function. You call it. I think we call it down here. We give it a URL, and it creates this socket object. And the socket object emits events, and we can listen to those events. So that's cool. So basically, we want this function not to be counted within the zone. We want to say, for this IO function, like anything that happens inside of it, like ignore it. It's not part of the zone. Like forget about it. Don't listen to it, right? So there's a good way to do this. We can import zone from CanZone. And zone has a functionality called zone.ignore, and it takes a function and it returns a new function. So let's rename this to socket.io. Now let's create a new IO function, and that's equal to zone.ignore IO, or excuse me, socket.io. And yeah, like I said, it returns a function, and calling this function is going to call this function, but without all of the zone stuff happening. It's going to ignore the fact that we're doing that heartbeat. So then we call it down here, it's going to be ignored. So yeah, we updated our code. Let's see if this works. Boom, it works. Our app rendered. We don't get any error messages. Bam. Yeah, that's a good one to know, is if you can import CanZone directly, zone.ignore. Sometimes if you're not dealing with functions, you have to do like, you'd have to make this into a function and like do stuff and other stuff here, and then you call the function. It just depends on your use case. Luckily here we have a function that we're messing with. Okay, so this is like the lower level solution. Knowing this, you can kind of fix anything that you run into. But the more direct solution to this particular problem is do not use socket.io client directly. Use Steal socket.io. So Steal socket.io also has the advantage of it shims the module, make sure it runs in Node and that kind of thing. But then it also handles the fact, because you don't want like these socket connections to happen when you're doing server-side rendering. But then it also handles the fact that this probably shouldn't run inside of the zone. So you can just use Steal socket.io instead. And let's try this again. And there we go. It rendered. Whew. That was pretty cool, I think. Another thing to remember is that you can, let's make this go bad again, is that you can adjust the timeout if you want. Let's get rid of the breakpoint and just do a regular timeout. Do data auto render timeout, and we can set this to 10 second, or it's defaults to 5, so let's do 2 seconds. So this is actually 2 seconds after the app loads. So the app still has to load, but then 2 seconds later, should be faster. Now we get all this stuff. So that's another thing to know. But yeah, debugging in done-autorender is hopefully an improved situation. I'm hoping that doing this video helped people out, figure out what they can do. And as always, you can hit us up in the forums, forums.done.js.com. Check us out on Getter and let us know what you think. So thanks a lot, everyone. I'm going to end this timeout, or this hangout. Timeout. All right, bye.